So good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Active Transportation Resource Center's webinar, Sustaining Active Transportation Program Non-Infrastructure Activities Beyond the Grant. I'm Alicia Ramos with the California Department of Public Health, and I'm joined by my colleague, Marianne Hernandez, who is assisting me today behind the scenes. We are both glad you can join us today. This webinar is part of the Active Transportation Resource Center's ongoing efforts to support active transportation implementers by providing resources, technical assistance, and training for the success of active transportation program projects. According to the ATP guidelines, all non-infrastructure projects must demonstrate how the program is sustainable and will continue after ATP funding is exhausted. So we will spend the next hour talking about sustainability. However, before we get started, we will take just a moment for you, our audience, to complete a short poll letting us know who is attending today. And so we have just 2 questions. And so the first question should be up on your screen, and it is, what type of organization do you represent today? So please let us know, select the best choice, and we will give folks a few seconds to do that. And see responses coming in. All right, we are at almost about 70%. Okay, we're at 70% response. Thank you to those who have responded. Okay, and I think we can share results for that one.
They're both showing at the same time, so you can go ahead and read the second.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes. And then the second question for non-infrastructure projects under the Active Transportation Program, you can select the choices that best fit. So perhaps you have already implemented a project, but you're also considering applying to the next cycle, which is cycle 8, or maybe you haven't. So I see some responses have come in for that. All right, great. Thank you, Marianne. And perfect. So we've got a lot of people from city and county government, public health departments, good MPOs, other. And many of you guys have about half of you guys have implemented an NI project, half of those who responded. Great. All right, so let's continue on. Thank you for your response. All right, before we dive into today's presentation, let's quickly go over a few housekeeping items. We encourage you to submit questions throughout the webinar by using the Q&A button in the Zoom interface to submit questions. When possible, please add the name of the presenter to whom the question is for, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. At the end of the webinar, each one of you will be prompted to complete our post-webinar survey. We encourage your participation to complete the short survey as it helps improve the quality of our webinars. And lastly, the webinar is being recorded and will be shared with all who registered for this webinar in the coming days. We will also have the completed slide deck and a resource document available on the ATRC website. And just some learning objectives. By the end of this webinar, you'll be able to learn how to address the sustainability requirement for non-infrastructure projects under the Active Transportation Program guidelines. And you'll be able to demonstrate approaches to institutionalize NI activities into ongoing programs and partnerships to ensure continuity beyond initial grant funding. And then our guest speakers. We are excited to be joined by fantastic speakers today. And our first speaker, Stephanie Allward, who is the Active Transportation Program Non-Infrastructure and Plan Manager at Caltrans. After Stephanie, we will hear from our 2 ATP examples, starting with Jeannie LePage, who is the Strategic Fund Development Director with Ecology Action. And then following Jeannie, we will hear from Carrie Vanderbaum, who is with Butte County Public Health. And with that, I will stop sharing my screen and ask for Stephanie to please start sharing hers as I read her bio and introduce her to you, our audience. So Stephanie is a senior transportation planner with over 11 years of experience planning in both private and the public sector. She is a graduate of the Master of Urban and Environmental Planning program at Arizona State University, where she focused on transportation planning and sustainable planning. Stephanie is committed to decreasing humanity's reliance on car travel by encouraging multimodal options. Fantastic, Stephanie. All right, I will turn it to you. I can see your screen, your slides. Perfect.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I couldn't see my panel got minimized when I shared my screen. So thank you for that introduction, Alicia. So yeah, just to add a little bit, I'm at Caltrans headquarters, Division of Local Assistance, Office of State Programs. And I will be talking about sustainability within the non-infrastructure projects of the active transportation program. Okay. Just a little bit of background. I'm not sure, exactly who our audience is. Most of you are probably at least a little familiar with the active transportation program, but this program was established in 2013, and we've so far completed 7 cycles. And cycle 8 will be beginning soon. But the overarching purpose of the ATP is to encourage active transportation. And with that expanded active transportation use, we can accomplish several goals, 6 of which are highlighted by the active transportation program. And in short, these goals are increasing active transportation, making active transportation safer, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, enhancing public health, serving disadvantaged communities, and accommodating a diverse range of projects. There are essentially 3 eligible project types within the active transportation program: infrastructure, non-infrastructure, and plan types. And there's a 4th category of combo projects, which include both an infrastructure and a non-infrastructure component. And of course, today I'll be focusing specifically on the non-infrastructure project types, which are typically education and encouragement programs that further the goals of the ATP. I think some of our other presenters today are going to go into more examples of exactly what examples of non-infrastructure projects are. But these are really common. Would be a Safe Routes to School program, where we're specifically educating school-age children on bicycle safety and training, and things like that. But there's quite a variety of projects that could fall under that umbrella of non-infrastructure. Okay, I want to get into just a little bit of kind of the inherent importance of sustainability within the active transportation program, and specifically non-infrastructure projects. I know this is a very wordy slide, but basically what I'm highlighting here is that the active transportation program is really competitive. So it looks like about 3,300 applications have been received in those. Well, this is for through cycle 6. I don't have the cycle 7 information handy, but I think the percentages have been about the same, consistent. So out of that, 1,200 projects have been funded, and only 97 of those have been NI projects, and another 183 have been combo projects. So basically, this is a really heavily utilized program for active transportation projects. It's very competitive. There's limited funding. The chances of, or the amount of non-infrastructure projects that are getting funded through this program, the percentage and the number are pretty low. So what we want to accomplish by making sure these projects are sustainable is just really maximizing the limited funding that's available, and making sure that these projects are set up so it's not just a 1 or 2 year benefit that the community will receive if this project is funded, but that we will help these agencies set themselves up to continue on the project in the future, so that the benefits can still be felt by the community. Okay, and yeah, and just in case this wasn't clear, sustainability, what we're talking about in this capacity is different than what we normally are talking about, or many of us are talking about when we think of sustainability within transportation, which is, of course, the active transportation program does focus on and is the main goal of. But normally we might think of any sustainable transportation projects that do things like reduce greenhouse gas emissions, or a focus on transit and active transportation, which of course is the main goal of this program. But we're talking about program sustainability, so continuing the program services and benefits after funding has been exhausted. Okay, so how to plan for a sustainable non-infrastructure project or program. Like I said, we do have Cycle 8 starting up soon. I think the call for projects will be sometime in March. And at that time, we will have on the Caltrans website, or there's an ATP page, and new non-infrastructure guidelines will be posted, which will kind of go into a little bit of support and guidance resources for how to plan for sustainability. And you can find the Cycle 7 guidelines up right now. There will be some things that change, but probably not the sustainability part. So the main goal is to set up an agency, or the agency will set itself up to continue the project, and we have many examples of how this can be accomplished, but basically we want to use, or we want that ATP funding to be used to create replicable resources. So one example would be Train the Trainers, which is, you're utilizing that ATP funding to train staff, or, anyone that can continue on whatever your project is. So one example of this would be training guard, or crossing guard training. So maybe, if your project trains a specific staff, if you have a Safe Routes to School program funded by the ATP, you can train, staff at the school that will be able to kind of just have that as part of their job. So it will just be one of their duties that's already, a staff that already exists. Curriculum, I think one common or commonish project would be, an I project would be to have like a curriculum taught at the school, like through a PE class, for instance. So, if you are able to use your ATP funding to develop, even like a digital curriculum or something that can be used in the future, for, maybe annually as like a part of a class that is taught annually to students as they come through. And equipment is another good example. Training equipment, they are an eligible non-infrastructure cost. So this might include things that, like if an agency wants to hold bike rodeos, or, any type of community or school training, to kind of like do on-hands training of, how to ride a bike, how to fix your bike, how to navigate safely in a street, with cars, and what the rules are of the road for bicyclists and drivers. The program will fund things like bicycles and helmets that can be used for that training, and that are kept by the agency, so that they can be used in future, once that equipment is purchased and kept there by the agency, it can be used for, future rodeos or whatever events can be planned. So, one of the strategies would be to locate or identify who would be responsible to house that equipment and maintain it and, keep it moving forward. So, that's just some examples. Okay, and that concludes my presentation. So thank you very much. I think we're going to take questions all at the end. So, but if you have any questions specifically for me, just maybe take a chance to write them down now, and then we'll circle back at the end. But thank you, everyone, and I will stop sharing now.
Perfect. Thank you, Stephanie, for that presentation. And yes, you're correct. We will address questions at the end, but by all means, people, please feel free to submit your questions for Stephanie now, and then we can address those during our Q&A session. All right, so moving on to our next speaker, Jeannie LePage has worked in active transportation efforts in the Monterey Bay area over the past 17 years. As the Strategic Fund Development Director at Ecology Action, she has helped her region win over $167 million in awards that help build bike and pedestrian infrastructure and provide non-infrastructure programming. She serves on the ATP Technical Advisory Committee as a non-infrastructure representative. So with that said, I will turn it over to Jeannie LePage. And so Jeannie, just go ahead and prompt me whenever you would like for me to move forward on your slides.
Okay, well, thanks for having me, and you can go ahead and move forward. So I'm here with Ecology Action. We're a nonprofit based in Santa Cruz County on the Central Coast. And I know probably our story is a little unique. I think we have a lot of folks from public health and public entities up and down the state. Just a little bit about EA. We do more than active transportation. We do lots of active transportation. We also do energy management. We have electric vehicle practice where we do installations, education around electric vehicles, and we have also a community resilience effort, which is pretty exciting. So go ahead, Alicia. So a little bit about the active transportation programs that we do. We have grown our programs from back in the late 80s. We had our first bike to work day in the county. Then in the early 2000s, we started to offer bike rodeos in schools. And you can see here our current 2025, 2026 offerings in school programs. There's over 15 programs. And I'm going to talk a little bit further in the program about how we have diversified and grown and piloted new ideas. And if you just run through this list of programs here, you can see it's diverse and rich, and also just kind of interesting. A lot of different things that work in different communities. Okay, go ahead, Alicia. And then our community programs serving the general community, the adult population, you can see that we have grown from doing the bike to work effort to all kinds of different community-based programs that serve. We also have senior education, e-bike demos, different things. And in 2013, we also started to do transportation planning. We realized that our region, to be able to win programs like ATPs, to be able to build infrastructure, they needed to have plans in place. So we currently have a planning team, transportation planning team. We do audits with that team, lots of public engagement. We've done traffic garden design. We're in the process of doing that in Santa Cruz County. And we piloted participatory budgeting in Monterey County, which was interesting also. So go ahead, Alicia, to the next slide. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of what our organization does. It's diverse, it's rich, and we've been doing it for a long time. And I put together kind of this timeline just to show how we've evolved over the years and how our budgets have evolved, how our staff have evolved. And I would say predicated any kind of growth, sustainability, health that our organization has enjoyed is all based on partnerships, partnerships with public health, with public works jurisdictions in our region, with law enforcement, with all kinds of entities that are concerned and interested in expanding and making biking and walking safer in our communities. So, in the background of the partnerships, I also think that Ecology Action made strategic decisions that have allowed us to enhance our sustainability and to be able to have a rich offering. And the first one I have here, the bullet, is program diversity, that we continued to, I think we had a mandate at the org, and we continue to have a mandate that we want to try to reinvent, find out the best practices, pilot new ideas, and we've listened to the communities that we've served. We have deep relationships to know what may be lacking, how communities would like to see things improved. So that diversity, I think, has been a big plus for us, where we've been able to propose ideas that maybe jurisdictions hadn't utilized yet and be able to figure out how to make them work better. So for me, that's a big cornerstone. Additionally, we made decisions to grow geographically. We started in our county. Santa Cruz is in the northern part of the county, and the second largest city, Watsonville, is in the southern part of the county. We made first a strategic decision to expand and serve the entire county. And when we felt like we really had that under our belt, then we made a strategic decision to go down south into an adjoining county, Monterey County. And we've since then grown into the Bay Area, into like Santa Clara, San Mateo counties up further north of us. So I think having that diversity has also allowed us to find opportunity and then to learn from our partners in those other jurisdictions. We currently, as a result of that, we have 3 full youth teams that serve their clients, one in Monterey, one in Santa Cruz, and then one in the North Bay area. So that's been, I think, a big plus as well. And then investing in development. So my full-time job is to find revenue opportunities, partnerships for our implementation team. The implementation team clearly is busy out in the field delivering programming. They don't have the time to scan for opportunities. That really is my job. And we didn't always have that. So as we evolved and grew, we really put our faith in that, standing by development, funding that development work would reap rewards, and it really has. So at first it was part of my time was develop it. That morphed into full time, and then we hired a development lead that for the entire organization. So we now have 3 full-time folks that just focus on bringing in awards, looking for opportunities, and partnering with local jurisdictions to be able to win opportunities for our org. So I would say program diversity is important, geographic diversity is important, and investing in development because, and I know our situation is unique, that we're a nonprofit, we're not a city, that kind of thing, where we do have the flexibility to do that. But I think that it really has served Ecology Action. So go ahead, Alicia. I wanted to have this one visual here just to show we started with our bike rodeo. We have an in-class education program, which is one of our bread and butter programs. It's been in our stable since 2004. And you can see how we were serving just 6 schools in 2004, 22 classes. And over the years, as we have grown and evolved our offerings and evolved our funding sources, we've been able to really increase our offerings. We're now serving 60 plus schools in 2025 and over 250 classrooms. And those green dots then show you all up and down the Central Coast, going up into the Bay Area, how we've been able to expand. Go ahead, Alicia. So ATP has been essential. We couldn't have done what we've done without ATP. And I refer to it as kind of the spine of our support that having, I can't overstate the importance of having a 4-year ramp to be able to test ideas, to build relationships at schools or in the community, to pilot new programs, refine them, modify them, that 4-year window is essential for having the vital non-infrastructure programming that we're able to provide in our communities. So ATP is essential. And I would just say for anyone that hasn't been able to tap into ATP for NI work, it's just been allowed us to be able to really grow and create some really interesting programs. And along the way, Ecology Action cannot be an actual recipient of ATP. We're a nonprofit. So to have any kind of ATP implementation, we've had to partner. So we've partnered with public health, with our county parks, with many public works jurisdictions, with the University of California here at Santa Cruz to win those awards. And then we are in a position to be able to help implement the NI aspects of them. So go ahead, Alicia. So with that ATP spine, I will say, and which we have been very, very appreciative of, we've really grown other deep partnerships. And that has allowed us to enhance, and in cycles when we are not successful or there are no ATP opportunities, we're able to fill in and grow in other ways. So the California Office of Traffic Safety is a really, really important partner. And I would say if you have not applied to an OTS grant, they're annual. They're a really important part of the EA picture of how we've been successful. Going back to 2009, we had a single award from our county public health department for $35,000. And we renewed that in 2017. We went to a local police department down in Watsonville. We then secured a second contract. And then over the years realized that not only did OTS want to expand the kind of programming that they were doing, but they really were looking for other jurisdictions throughout the state to apply. So knowing that, we approached other police departments, asked them if they would be interested in partnering, and we've been quite successful. And the OTS awards, you can see here, we now have an annual sum of approximately $650,000 a year, just in OTS awards. I think that's 5 different contracts. So if you have not looked into OTS, I would really definitely encourage you to do so. Okay, Alicia. In addition to OTS, one of the major providers of long-term funding and support has been local tax measures. So the first tax measure I think that we were able to plug into was in Monterey County. It's Measure X. It's a transportation tax. And our first contract was very small. We've eventually, over maybe a 15-year period, grown that contract. We now have a 5-year contract with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County to implement Measure X funding. And again, anybody that's out there implementing knows how important having a multi-year ramp is to be able to test ideas, to be able to get your staff in order, to be able to really have everything excellent, I would say. To turn things around a year, you're really limited in the kinds of ideas that you can test. So local tax measures have been really important for helping us to be able to do that. In our local county, Measure D has been important. So each specific jurisdiction in the county receives a portion of Measure D funding. So we've approached each of those individual jurisdictions to see if we've been able to plug into that money, and that's been successful. And that kind of support really has supported our classroom-based bicycle and pedestrian safety offerings. And then in Santa Clara County, they have a Measure B, as in boy. And so we've been looking at jurisdictions in that region to be able to utilize Measure B funding for some of our programming. Go ahead, Alicia. So that's those funding sources that I've mentioned really have been about supporting our Safe Routes to School kind of community programming that are about bicycle and pedestrian safety and encouragement. In addition, we made the decision back in 2013. We tested with the city of Santa Cruz applying for a Caltrans Sustainable Planning Grant. And the reason we did that is we realized that in our community, we didn't have basic plans in place. There was no active transportation plan. There was no safe routes to school plan. So we partnered with the city of Santa Cruz and wrote a grant for a Caltrans planning grant to create a safe routes to school plan for our city. We were successful and we ended up doing that planning work. We hired a technical consultant to come in and do the technical pieces. And the product was then the city had a Safe Routes to School plan that then they could turn around and submit to ATP to do an implementation grant, which was successful. So I think we were kind of looking from soup to nuts, how to build programming to help local jurisdictions create the plans, help them find the funding for those plans, then do the planning work. Then you can bring the implementation money in and then see these programs and the infrastructure created in your community. So that's been, I think, really successful. We've written over 7 successful Caltrans planning grants that mostly have provided plans for County of Santa Cruz jurisdictions and County of Monterey. So we do have a planning practice, I call it, a small but mighty planning team. And they do lots of public engagement. We've done lots of audits, both public audits, school audits. We've done community-based needs assessments. And again, I mentioned in Monterey County, we've piloted participatory budgeting. So that's a little bit about transportation, but also I think it could be part of your sustainability story. Go ahead, Alicia. So I know that we're unique in that we have dedicated development staff to be able to look for opportunities, and not everybody has that. So I would, if you're in the position where you're an implementer, look at your partnerships with your public jurisdictions. I would look at additional ways to create new programming, have new flavors, to be able to attract new funders, to try new ideas. And then the different funding calls here that I've listed, we have tapped into all of them, plus more I probably haven't even remembered to list here. We have a small private donor program. We've applied for and received Safe Streets for All for planning work. We've received 2 of them, I believe. Your local hospital may have funds to be able to purchase bike helmets in particular. And in the early days, we really relied on local private foundations that were interested in our particular communities, and we were successful at winning them. And those funding sources helped us to be able to grow and get on our feet to be able to do bigger and better things. Kids Plate has an every other year call. That's been really important. They provided support not only for helmets, but for implementation of our school-based bicycle and pedestrian safety programs. And then we're always looking for local transportation funding calls, which there are in our region. So that's a little bit about how Ecology Action has been successful and how we've continued to be flexible and open and to try to reinvent ourselves, as it will, to be able to provide services and education and encouragement for active transportation in our region. Okay, thank you, Alicia.
You are very welcome. And let's see, I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you for your wonderful presentation. Very informative. And now we will introduce our next speaker, who is also our final speaker for our webinar. And she is Carrie Vanderbaum, and she is a program manager for the Butte County Public Health Department Injury Prevention Program. She oversees youth and adult bike, pedestrian, and child passenger safety programs, as well as suicide prevention. Through ATP, Office of Traffic Safety, and Safe Streets for All funding, the injury prevention team works countywide to improve many aspects of active transportation. Carrie developed an interest in active transportation through previous work in implementation science and inclusive community health promotion specific to disability and underserved groups. Carrie earned a PhD in exercise and support science from Oregon State in 2013. So with that, Carrie, I'll turn it over to you. And perfect, we see your slides. You're good to go.
Thank you. All right, so I think you're actually going to hear a lot of similar themes from how we've grown here in Butte County, as Jeannie just explained. So there might be something to that. So our programs for active transportation are within our injury prevention program. If you're not familiar with Butte County, I'm going to just quickly talk about it and why we do this work. I'll talk about our program, the history, our grants, and then hopefully leave you with some tips. Again, probably similar to what Jeannie just explained. So Butte County is in the Sacramento Valley. We are a semi-rural area. Depending on what stats you look at, we have about 208 to 211,000 people. Our largest city is Chico, and we have a high poverty rate. It's around 18% across the county, but if you disaggregate that data, it can be much higher. So as an example, the city of Orrville is about at 23%. We also have higher than the state average of the percent of people living with a disability, the population over the age of 65, and then probably similar across the state, but we have an ever-growing unhoused population. And again, very similar to, I think, rural areas, we have a high vehicle crash rate. I'm just going to highlight one for the sake of time, but in 2024, we had about 806 vehicle crashes. 100 of those involved either bicyclists or pedestrian. 7 people were killed and 101 injured. Looking at the partial 2025 data, which we compiled about a month ago, already was showing that we've exceeded those numbers. And then, of course, a large portion of those crashes with bicycles and pedestrians do occur on our rural roads. So we started out a team of probably about 2, and just over the last couple of years, we've been able to expand to 7. However, only 6 of our team members work in active transportation, so our bike and pedestrian safety work. But then I also want to highlight that 5 of us, of those 6 people, also work in child passenger safety. So we do also work in multiple areas of traffic safety. So we began our journey in bicycle and pedestrian safety with the ATP grants. So we were a part of a cycle 2 and 3 grant that they were combo grants. So very focused areas and locations within the county. But really our bread and butter, where we started to develop this foundation of our work and really started to grow in this area of bicycle and pedestrian safety, was in cycle 4. So we had an NI only grant. And it was really quite genius of our division director who wrote it. It was a 2-parter. So the grant included safe routes to school portion, where we focused and prioritized 4 schools across the county. But then the genius part was that she wrote in a county-wide resource center for bike and pedestrian safety. And this really was where we were able to establish that foundation, make those connections and collaborations, and expand our reach across the county versus, just in a focused area. That grant, I think it was about 5 years, because we got to do an extension, I think, because it crossed over through COVID. And so again, we really established relationships across the county, and then also established this reputation as kind of that go-to for the bicycle and pedestrian safety. Currently, we have a Cycle 6 combo grant with the County Public Works. But again, this one is pretty focused in our South Oroville area. We also have an Office of Traffic Safety grant. We've been funded by them since 2017 to conduct bicycle and pedestrian work. These grants have allowed us to conduct county-wide work and also across the lifespan, which again is really important I think in our story as far as sustaining and growing, because we're not just with youth, but with older adults and college-age students, and we're conducting education, outreach, different classes, and events. We also, through our OTS grants, conduct media campaigns and then are able to distribute safety equipment such as bicycle helmets and lights. And then similar to what Ecology Action did, kind of got into that transportation planning area. And so more recently, we also were awarded a Safe Streets and Roads for All grant, where we took the lead on developing our safety action plan county-wide. So we had a couple of jurisdictions that just didn't have the capacity to complete a safety action plan. And this is really important in order to apply for future infrastructure money. So we were able to apply for that grant, got it, and completed that safety action plan this last September. And then we also applied for a second grant, a planning and demonstration Safe Streets and Roads for All grant. And so with this one, it just got executed, so we're very excited. It's also a 5-year grant. And this is going to allow us to work on some behavior change issues, as well as some of that transportation planning. So we'll be able to conduct pop-ups, different pilot tests of what different municipalities and jurisdictions want to pilot test before they actually spend all the money and do all the work in putting in, say, bike lanes or more footpaths. So we're really excited to get that started. Oh, and along with that also, we'll continue to work with the jurisdictions to collect data that can then refine our safety action plan that we completed. So here's just a few pictures of some of our different activities. In the top left corner, we have a group of children doing a walking school bus. Our most recent Cycle 6 grant, we've gotten more into working with junior high and high school age students around bicycle and pedestrian safety, but also in talking to them about being safe drivers around bicyclists and pedestrians. Some of the other work, again, expanding beyond just safe routes to school and children. We have written into our grants to conduct League of Cycling instructor courses. We do walk audits with the different jurisdictions to help them gather data. And then we do a lot of focused outreach. So we've done smart cycling and bicycling classes for individuals with disabilities, the unhoused population, and then working with our college students. And of course, all of this work would not be possible without our partners across the county. And I'm sure I forgot some on this list, but they include first responders, different cultural centers, agencies and organizations serving older adults, people with disabilities, the unhoused, of course, with our working in our schools, churches, and we've been fortunate also to work with some of our surrounding counties. We really started our work with surrounding counties more so in the realm of our child passenger safety, but as our surrounding counties have gotten like OTS grants to do the work in active transportation, we've been able to kind of mentor some of them through their work. So we're not going in to do the work in their counties, but we're just kind of mentoring them through it. and giving them ideas so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. All right, so I know some of this has already been mentioned, but just some of the practical tips for sustaining and expanding programs. Obviously, leveraging other grants and opportunities. As it's been explained, ATP grants are very competitive, and so relying on them, for future funding and to fund your work, probably not a great idea. So thinking about what the other opportunities are is really important. And not all the opportunities need to be tied to money. So every year, a couple of times throughout the year, CalWalks and SafeTrek, they put out announcements for different opportunities. So they'll come into your community and do walk audits. So whether you've been around for a long time or you're a new program, I think this is such a great opportunity. We've done it a couple of times, but they come in, do a walk audit with us. I call it a training because I always learn new stuff. But then they also then will create a report for you that your local public works can use when they're trying to apply for other grants, or that will help inform the work that they're about to do, the infrastructure work they're about to do. So that's just a really great opportunity. Obviously, applying for other financial grants. So it's already been discussed, but Office of Traffic Safety is a great one. Safe Streets and Roads for All, and then foundation grants. AARP actually has some really great opportunities. They're usually smaller grants, but they can get little projects off the ground if you want to kind of pilot test things or just do something different. So keep your eye out for those. I think that opportunity just came out recently and might be due in a couple of weeks. Because we're in a public health department, there's a lot of other programs that we're affiliated with. And so it's really wonderful when we can hear about connections they have or the connections that we have. And so we can reach out to them, say our oral health program, when we hear that, they work very closely with one of our local tribes and we're trying to, make that connection. We can reach out to them, and it's a great resource because you always kind of need someone and a gatekeeper sometimes to get into different communities. Building relationships is really important. As I mentioned in our Cycle 4 grant, I think that was a really important place that we were able to build those relationships. So, our public works departments don't always have a lot of capacity. And so we try to help them with whatever we can, whether that's compiling crash statistics or organizing walk audits, or even something bigger like writing that safety action plan grant that we were able to do. And then I think a really important part of building relationships is staying involved with communities after grants end. That's important in order to maintain trust and those relationships over time. I think, Jeannie really covered this well, but, evolve over time. Don't be scared to grow. One of the biggest things I think that's been helpful for us is one, knowing our stats and how they've changed over time. And so that's helped us identify which communities we need to be in and which maybe groups that we should target and for safety related stuff. So older adults, was one of them that popped out, the unhoused population. And so a couple of years ago, that's when we really started doing work with those communities, was when we started to notice how they were affected in the crash statistics. Use best practices and evidence-based strategies or evidence-informed strategies. Don't be afraid to adapt good ideas for your local context. I know when we go to conferences and we hear about like the city of New York, right? Butte County, we're nowhere near the size of the city of New York, but we, they have so many great ideas. And so we've taken some of those and we've adapted them for our local context on a smaller scale. I should have probably put this one at the top, but involving our communities and the different stakeholders is critical. And so that always needs to be a part of how you grow and what your priorities become. And then along with that is having that strategic plan. How quickly you can grow, how much you can grow, should be a part of that strategic plan. So obviously, like when you're writing grants, you should be writing in enough money to hire staff. But again, depending on how quickly you can grow or not, that'll be important to keep an eye on. I think another genius little life hack thing is we early on, and this wasn't my brainchild, but wrote into the grants to conduct league cycling instructor trainings. So after those trainings, the people who pass then are certified cycling instructors. So when we had a small team of people and we were stretched thin, we're stretched thin even now, but we're able to call up those cycling instructors to have them help conduct our events and conduct the education that my staff doesn't have the time to do. So we even write into our grants a stipend for those LCIs when they do conduct that work. Just for the sake of time, I'll skip down to the bottom. Again, we talked about maintaining relationships even after the funding ends. It can be something as small as attending meetings or dropping off resources to say hi, but just making sure that they know that you're still there and you haven't forgotten them, and you're trying to do as much as you can. When we can, we will still, conduct classes for certain organizations or schools, even though we're technically not, we don't have the funds to do it. We will still make it happen just to maintain those relationships. Again, similar to Ecology Action, we've helped local organizations around the county apply for grants. So it could be direct assistance, whether we're helping to write sections of grants or we're just editing, making recommendations. And if anything, what we do is provide that public health perspective. And so since 2017, with 6 different grants, we've helped our county secure almost $57 million. And I'm going to stop sharing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Carrie, for your presentation. And let's see, I'm going to share my screen, but as I do that, we are now going to go into our Q&A session. I know we have just a few minutes, but I think so far we've been able to answer the questions that have come in as they have come in. But Carrie, I do see one question that came in just while you were presenting, and I know you probably haven't had a chance to see it, but the question is, have you stayed involved with communities after the end of your grant?
Yes, absolutely. We have. One way that we do it, for like OTS, we do a certain number of bicycle rodeos every year. And so even though we may not have money to do certain things in different communities, what we will do is we try to spread the love. And so like we'll switch up the schools or the areas that we're doing the bike rodeos in, and then maybe the ones that don't get it, the bike rodeos, then we'll go and do pedestrian lessons in them. So we're always trying to figure out a way to kind of spread the love and the resources and the services that we provide, but we try really hard to maintain those relationships. And again, some places, if we don't have time, it is just a matter of dropping off resources and saying hi, so they don't forget us and they know we haven't forgotten them.
Awesome. Thank you. Perfect. And then let's see. I know there was a question talking about open streets, and I see we answered that one. Open streets. ATRC also did a webinar on open streets back in, I think, April of last year, something like that. You can find it on our ATRC website, but open streets is something that is funded through NI. I provided one example that I know of since I've been involved with the ATP and the ATRC. That's the example that I know often gets spoken about when we talk about open streets, but open streets is a good opportunity for community engagement and being able to do like workshops for education and encouragement activities. So let's see if there's any other questions. I'm not seeing any other questions coming in regarding the presentations, but I'll turn it over to the presenters to see if there's anything else that maybe you guys want to touch on a little bit more. We don't have a whole lot more time, but if there's anything else, also if anybody in the audience has an answer and wants to come off mute, we're happy to unmute folks and you can give your verbal question. But let's see here. Related, I see one that came in, related to staying involved with communities. Do you have data statistics showing the extent to which programs you've launched have sustained 2 to 3 years after? Any data on that or anything else you want to say about that?
No, no data, but it's a great thing to consider in the future.
Yeah,
Sorry.
no problem. All right. I'll do one last call for questions. I know we are winding down and then I still just have like a few more slides to go through, but I'll give it one last chance for any burning questions somebody has. But if not, we can always be reached by email. And so we will move on and close off. So let's see here. Marianne and I are available to provide technical assistance for non-infrastructure projects, and that's displayed on the slide is our contact information with the districts that we support. Anyone interested in non-infrastructure technical assistance is welcome to contact us. And then in closing, I would like to thank our wonderful presenters and audience for joining us today. We are very glad that you were able to make it, and we hope that this was fruitful to you guys. Remember, there will be a post survey at the end as you log off the webinar, and then look out for the link that will come into your inbox in the next few days that will have the link to the recording, resource document, and the complete slide deck. Okay. Thank you once again for joining us, and we hope to see you at our next ATRC webinar. Thank you.